Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keeping It Real with America's Supermom. So, we are here this morning finally dealing with a little snafu with the schedules of being in different time zones. But I just want to thank my guest for her patience and everything. So, I have Titilola here, all the way from the UK. And so we are
Hi,
here to have a great conversation. But before we get into all that, I want to give her the opportunity to introduce herself.
Michelle. Thank you so very much for having me here on your platform. It's a privilege to be talking about the most difficult topic, as we would be today, grief. Just
Mhm,
before we go into that, so
mhm,
my name is Titilola Balogun, an advanced grief recovery specialist. It's a mouthful.
mhm.
Um, I'm also a lawyer. I'm not sure if I mentioned to
Oh,
you,
no.
I talked to you. I'm a lawyer, a non-practicing lawyer at the moment. I'm an author, the author of Nuggets for Nurturing Parenting Journey, a
Mhm,
book I've written from my experience of nurturing four beautiful daughters on my own. They're all grown now, so
mhm,
I thought I would share that experience with the world because I've been asked a couple of times, how did you do it? But
mhm.
you know what? I've had a bit of a twist in that ever since I met you, and you've told me about your experience, and I'm thinking, well, do you know what? Well done to you, fair play to you. I've got four, you've got double plus my numbers.
Mhm.
I had to raise my daughters on my own. Um, but I'm just really grateful to God for who they are today, and thank God for their future as well too.
Mhm.
So I help parents, just through consultation and just talking them through difficult times and challenges with their kids. And that's me in a nutshell, amongst other things that I do.
I love that. And, I'm just diving right into the no excuses because so often people will, allow us to not realize our greatness. Oh,
Mm,
you're a single parent. We understand. It's like, they expect you to be average or below average because you have what
mhm.
they feel is a deficit of some sort. So, I mean, you're a lawyer, author, and you're a grief coach. So I think the first thing is how did you get the mindset to
Mm.
be able to accomplish all these things in spite of being a single mother?
Good question. I've been asked that a couple of times as well too, and my quickest spontaneous response is, I don't know. I
Mm,
don't know. Because I really don't know how I've, because when I look back and I think back to how did I do this, how did I come through still happy, still full of life, still energetic, still have my senses, still thriving and helping other women. I kind of think, how did you do this?
mhm,
But again, just over time, because I've been asked that question over time, I have then had a deeper thought about it. And truly, I think what has really helped me is the fact that I practice the one day at a time rule.
mm,
Yeah, so I've just literally just taken one day and one thing at a time because I realized just looking back and analyzing, the times that I felt quite low and the times that I felt quite high. And the times that I felt quite low were times when I tried to take on everything on
mhm,
board. So I was worried about this and worrying about that, and things that I had absolutely no control over. I couldn't determine if they were going to happen. I couldn't determine if they would ever happen, what time they would happen, etc. And so I just started to practice that. Of course, a lot of self care as well too.
mhm.
And I just realized not too long ago that I am an empath. So you know I think that just naturally goes with going out to help people in all the things that I do, helping parents with their parenting exercise or their parenting journey, and helping people who have suffered any type of loss at all, up to 40 losses really, or even over that,
Mm.
and helping them overcome that.
That's a
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. So one
now.
day at a time really is the summary.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you look back, you reflect, and you thought about, and that's just a precious um, behavior to have because so many
Mm,
people don't think, they don't reflect, they don't
mm.
take that time in that space. So, was that always a practice? I know for myself, I went through 13 years of depression because I didn't practice reflecting and thinking and being quiet with yourself. So, was that something that you always did or you grew to do that? How did that take place?
Um, I think it's something I've always grown to do as
Mhm.
well. So this would be from college,
Mhm.
from different training courses, from working with groups of women, from facilitating groups. It's just a normal practice to think back and just reevaluate, things that you've done. What did I do well? What could I do better? And what could I do less? That has always been a way for me to try and just gauge where I am and just
Mhm.
going forward, apply the lessons that I've learned in the past to help me going forward. Yeah, so really, I think it's just something that I've practiced over time.
That's
And
awesome.
I've taught my children as well to do that. You have to be able to just look back at where you are and reflect on things and see what's gone wrong, what's gone well, and just move on from there.
Awesome. Now,
Yeah.
so what type of law was it that you practiced?
So I practiced criminal law, and then I did a bit of yeah, and then I did a bit of housing law and immigration law as well too over time.
Mhm. That's amazing. Now, so you did all these things and then you get into grief. So you mentioned you were an empath. So this really doesn't seem unusual that
Mm.
this would be something that you would do, but how did you pivot into grief, or was this something you always did and you just put it more in the forefront? How did this even take place?
Yeah, Lachelle, do you know what? Growing up and just being with people and just thinking again, just deep thinking about myself, it took me a long time to actually discover that that's who I am. But I've always been described as someone by my family, by my friends, they're like, oh my God, Titilola is just this person who takes on every other person's problem. She doesn't care, what impact it has on her. She's very she's got listening ears. She's very compassionate. She's got empathy and all of these things, or should bend her back for anyone. And I'm thinking to myself, this doesn't sound like me, because each time I've been told that, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, not really. But one thing that I found that was quite consistent, excuse me, along the journey was I found myself just really wanting to listen, more or less like almost fishing out people who've got problems,
Mhm.
bringing them close to me, wanting to hear them out and wanting to help them and actually going on to help them. And so I thought to myself, hang on a minute. When there's a piece of news on TV, in the newspapers, or anywhere at all about death and things like that, or if somebody's had a broken relationship, my heart just like breaks for them.
Wow.
Excuse me. And all of a sudden, I don't have any rest at all. I'm like constantly just thinking of ways to help them. And so I thought to myself, okay, if I do this, and I've been doing this all this time, I might as well just get a certification, just to make sure that, I can deliver proper service and proper help to people. Make sure that I'm giving them exactly what they need, something that can move them on to the next stage and make them feel not just listening. And so I thought, okay, I'll just go online and do a search. And yes, I did that. And I found things on bereavement counseling, just counseling in general. And then I came across the Grief UK. And one thing that set that apart for me was that it just wasn't about death. It wasn't just about bereavement. It was about emptiness. It was about having a loss from intangible losses, like loss of freedom, like we've just had in the past year and
Mhm.
a half,
Mhm.
loss of a limb, loss of work. Like a lot of people have had to,
Mhm.
quit work or they've been let go, and just And then I saw the separation and the divorce, and I'm thinking, okay, so I can get a certification that can allow me to do all of these things that I already do, all of this kind of support I give to people without a certification and, the backup for it. And I thought, okay, seems like the right way to go. And that was the first step I made about 4 to 5 years ago, thereabout. And I signed up for that course, and I haven't looked back since then. So I absolutely enjoy it.
That is so awesome. And so, walk us through what some of the coaching is that you do. So, I love how you mentioned all these different areas that we can have grief. And,
Yeah.
it's people who during this pandemic, maybe they had a certain family dynamic,
Mhm.
everybody was here in the house or whatever. And then things change because of the, need for additional income, or people's income and their sense
Mhm.
of identity has changed because their industries no longer operate the way that they used to. So, what are some things that people might notice in their own life that they may be grieving? Because a lot of people may just associate grief with, oh, I lost a family member or something.
Mhm.
They don't think about grief as it relates to these other areas. So, what are some signs that they could be struggling with that?
Okay, so I think I would break that question and answering it into two sections. So the first
Hmm.
section would be, what are the type of losses that people could have aside death? And I would mention a couple of them. And I would also mention the signs that people could be having as a result of suffering grief
Hmm.
as well too. So some of the losses, just like I've mentioned before, would be death, obviously. It would be divorce. It would be separation. And this is not just separation between a couple; it would be from for the children as well too. So would
Hmm.
have children who also, grieve separation, not necessarily separation of their parents. It could be separation from their friends. You see,
Hmm.
separation from having been at school, being in school with their friends for so many years, and then having to separate, like maybe the end of a college or maybe end of university, and not knowing if they're going to see them again. That could really, really, really be very painful,
Hmm.
and a child could really grieve from that. We've also got other losses like moving home.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, we've got the pet loss as well too. There are a lot of people who rely and depend on the company of their pets, and if they lose the pets, we've had people who've had like serious impact, negative impact as a result of losing their pets. There's an end of addiction loss as well
Hmm.
too. And these are the some of things that people don't really pay attention to as well too. Redundancy from work, and
Hmm.
yeah, I know quite a few people who have worked up till maybe their mid 60s or 70s, but after working, either because of retirement or because they've been made redundant, they can't seem to have a balance of life.
Hmm.
Again, because the pattern that they've been used to has now had to stop, and they're now just having to start up this new life, and they find it really difficult to move on from there. The financial change, the legal problems, and loss of health, etc.,
Hmm.
as well too. um, I suppose in terms of the sort of responses that people could have to grief, it would be reduced concentration, for instance. People
Hmm.
find it really, really difficult to focus and stay on course with things that they're doing. We are familiar with the sadness that comes with it. We're familiar with perhaps isolation. People just want to keep to themselves. They just don't want to be with anyone. We also have the disrupted sleeping patterns that can feature. Um, you could find people who have had change in their eating habits
Hmm.
as well too, or they may begin to take on something new that they haven't done before, just because they are trying to, give reason for the way they're feeling. But we say at the grief recovery, you don't need to give any reason when you grieve because it's a natural reaction to any sense of loss. And it's important that people identify that it's okay to feel this way. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with a person when they're grieving. And a lot of times, the whole symptoms and the signs that people would show or display when they grieve has been associated with depression. And you already mentioned that earlier on, Michelle, or with
Mhm.
anxiety. And a lot of people have been placed on medication, as a result of that.
Mm.
And that's just simply because they haven't worked through the roots to see what is the underlying reason why I'm feeling sad. Why am I eating, either too much or just too little? And
Mhm.
all of these sort of signs are things that could be really grave in terms of medical health. And of course, your first point of call would be the GP or the doctors who would, naturally prescribe some medication to you. Whereas you could actually have a psychotherapy, exercise, or even speak to a specialist or a counselor. And, you could get coached and get through working through your losses up to recovery and not need to rely on medication. And this is what we're really passionate about, this working through your losses through a very natural step-by-step program that can help you overcome the pain associated with it, which then, of course, leads to all of these sort of signs and things that we've talked about.
Love that. Now, so what are some things that we can say to people that
Mm,
are grieving? Because oftentimes, you know, it's like, well, God's not going to put anything on you can't bear, or some of these cliche type sayings. What
yeah.
should we really
Mm.
be saying to people when we recognize, they're grieving?
Yeah, okay. I suppose I would probably start with the things that people have said
Mm-hmm.
as well. So people would usually say to somebody who's experienced loss, they'll probably say to them, "Oh, don't feel sad.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's okay. Don't feel sad." How do you tell someone who's experienced loss, whose natural and normal reaction to loss is to feel sad, not to feel
Mm-hmm.
sad, or don't cry? And yeah, and one other common one is it's okay, you can replace the loss. So, for instance, someone's come over to visit somebody or gone over to say, "Oh, I've just lost a baby." And oh, it's okay, it's all right, you can get pregnant again and you can have another baby. But you see, the connection and the relationship between that person and that particular pregnancy is never going to be the same. You can't replicate it. And
Mm-hmm.
so they are just naturally going to grieve that, and they should be given the space to grieve that as well too. And people have been told, "Oh, be strong, just be strong," you
Mm-hmm.
know, stay strong. But how do you tell somebody who has completely been broken, like, I've
Mhm,
just possibly lost, my spouse or lost a child or something, and you're all telling me to be strong, like it's humanly impossible. And
mhm,
these are all the very intellectual comments that people say unknowingly, because, like I said, it's a very sensitive topic, and people really don't know what to say, or even time heals. That's the most common one, time heals.
mhm,
But we've said, yes, time heals, definitely. But time can only heal when you have added some other steps, some other actions to it. So
mhm,
just time
mhm,
on its own would not heal any sense of pain. And that's why the grief recovery affords you very, very simple, easy to follow steps to take through any sense of loss at all and to work it through. And then healing then begins to occur. Some of the things that would be helpful to say is, for instance, you might want to ask the person to tell you a little bit about it if you're a coach or a
mhm,
specialist, because the process of a griever talking about the experience, we find that it actually helps them to unburden. So that's always something that you could say again, as long as you are experienced enough to deal with the information that you're going to be receiving, because that
mhm,
could be quite heavy, on the recipient as well.
mhm.
I suppose the other thing to say is, I can't imagine, what your pain is. Whereas we would have been told or heard people saying, "Oh, I can just imagine what you're going through." But the truth is, you really can't imagine because you're not me, you're not Lachelle, and you
Mhm,
don't have the same experience that I have with this loss that I've had. So,
mhm,
again, we just say, rather than say, you know, I can imagine, just say, I really can't imagine what your pain is, and allow them to speak.
mm,
Grievers, we always say at the Grief UK is one thing we say is grievers don't need to be fixed, they only need to be heard. So
mm.
only need to be
Good.
heard. And it's creating a platform for people to speak and to tell their story in their own way, in their own space where they feel safe to do so. That, the sort of relief and ease of some of this pain that is associated with their loss. So those are some of the things that are helpful to say.
Mhm. I love that, and, I mean, what a special job you do. I think that is so important because, oftentimes we try to just rush through it or not really acknowledge, some of the, consequences from grief, how it can just be a domino effect if it's not really faced in a certain manner, then it could really kind of be a downward spiral if we're not careful. So it's very important work that you do.
Thank
So,
you.
talk to us about being an author, seeing the need to um, provide insight to parents. How did that come about?
Oh, yeah. So this is really, again, close to my heart. I see a lot of homes, a lot of families torn apart,
Hmm.
um, unhappy, troubled, and just all sorts. And you know what happens when a home is not settled? It transfers into the society. And so you find, children who have behavioral issues and adults who also feel entitled in the society for one reason or the other. And when I have looked really closely to these, some of these issues in the society, I have realized that a lot of the issues that people have would be as a result of the upbringing.
Hmm.
So it's the sort of parenting they had. Either the parents weren't really there, or maybe they were there but they weren't really present.
Hmm.
And also as a result of maybe poor parenting, not because the parents didn't love the kids, but because they didn't know any better to do.
Hmm.
And of course, it's just we tend to parent in the way that we were parented as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we think because I was brought up like this, and I must bring my children up like that as well too. And some of these experiences have been quite negative, but then they're just being carried on as well. So I became a single mom, not by choice. And I've been single mom as long as I think 11 to 12 years now.
Hmm.
And that whole journey, my daughters were pretty young at the time when this happened, and I had to take that on course myself. But I suppose one of the things that stood out for me, and I was not ready to compromise on the journey, despite the fact that I was a separated mom. I thought to myself, I am not going to compromise on the standards and on the parenting side of things.
Hmm.
And I've heard, being a single mom in the society is, you can't do it. Like the
Mhm,
all girls, when they get to a certain age, they're going to turn XYZ and you're going to have a really difficult time. But it was at that point in time that I decided that I was going to do anything and everything
mhm,
possible, and that I was going to be present for my children as much as I could as well too. And being present is just being emotionally connected with them, whether I was present physically with them or not. Being responsible to them, living by examples, and all of that stuff. And so there was quite a lot. There was quite a lot. I think largely, to a large extent, the parenting that I had as a child, growing up in Nigeria, which is my place of origin.
mhm,
Um, you know, I think my parenting base was quite a very fundamental one and very crucial to the life that I now live with my daughters, and that was quite influential as well too. So I took off some of the traits and some of the learnings and the skills that I watched my parents, use whilst they were training us, and I applied that as well as just as I was directed and led and felt as well to within me. And I would say that I did read and I did a few researches, but I think it was more of an inborn experience and determination not to watch my children, go. And don't get me wrong, there are times that we do things and we still don't. Number one, we still don't get it right, and number two, the
Right.
children just don't fall in line with it.
Mhm.
So I think to a large extent, even though parenting is meant to be quite intentional, I also
Mhm.
think it might be a part of it is also a game of luck or chance. And I hope I'm not going to get shot, by saying this, because sometimes parents just do everything that they can do, but the child still just goes their own way, really. And
Mhm.
it's a very difficult one. But I suppose one of the questions I've asked myself is, at what point in time do you stop parenting your child? Um, it's okay to parent them when they're from not to maybe 15, 16, maybe 19, depends. But at a
Mhm.
certain stage, you begin to have that sort of pushback, like, you know what, I'm old enough.
Mhm.
Um, you can't tell me what to do, or I think I should be doing that. But as a parent that this is going to be damaging in the long run, just
Mhm.
because I can't see it. So at what point in time do you begin to say, okay, that's fine, just go on and do what you have to do, knowing fully well that please God they don't, but you know that they're going to come back to you a couple of years down the line to say, oh, how I wish you didn't let me do this, and XYZ. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, I suppose just being with the girls over time, I had a lot of people when I would go out to visit or maybe go to church or go out really. And a lot of people would say, oh, your children are quite well behaved. I can't believe that you raised them on your own, and comments like that. And
Mhm.
so they're like, oh, can you tell me what you did? And a lot of my friends, who've got kids would come and discuss things with me as well too, and say, oh, XYZ, that's going on. What do you think I should do? And I thought, okay, it might just be easier to put these nuggets down in a book. And so last year around this time actually, I published my first book, the Kindle version, and then I went on later in the year then to do the hard copy book. So I shared 60 nuggets in that book, but I thought, you know, 60 nuggets, 60 blurbs, but I have made it into a manual. So there is a part that parents can use with their children, or carers can use with their children, or people who are in their care, not necessarily biological children, and take out the notes from the nuggets and also write out the
Mhm.
actions and the steps that they would take. So there is a notes page and there is also an action page in the book, as well as an index as well, so for quick reference. Yeah, so that's the birth of the book. That's how I came about Nuggets for Nurturing.
That is so awesome. So, what do you do in your daily routine that helps you to take action like you do? I mean, you've had your law career, you're a grief coach and an author, and just this can do attitude, you know, in spite of challenges that you're faced with. So, what do you do in your routine that helps you maintain that?
I think most importantly, I get a coach myself. That's
Hmm.
key.
Hmm.
So every coach needs a coach,
Hmm.
and everyone needs to be doing some sort of healing work or some work to make sure that they're okay to still carry on. And again, because of the type of work that I do, it's taken on quite a lot from people and taken on, other people's sort of issues or circumstances. So
Hmm.
that's quite hard. Um, the grief recovery program allows me as a specialist to do my work constantly, and I can
Hmm.
do my work with another colleague, another grief recovery specialist as well too. So as I face more and more everyday senses of loss, so as I take on more people's work, I can go and give that off again, do another completion exercise is what we call it, with
Hmm.
another grief recovery specialist, and just deal with all of those as time goes on. In practicality, what I did was I got the help of a coach who I am accountable to. And also, I have a friend also who We would usually have like set our goals a quarter, half yearly, and then we're both accountable to each other. And one of the tools that my coach shared with me, which I found really useful, was dividing my day and my activities on an Excel sheet, a program. So I know what I'm doing, say from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. I've got like almost like a school timetable
Mm,
for myself. So that keeps me in check. And there are times I just don't feel like sticking to it. And those times I don't get as productive as I should. But when I sit
mhm.
down and I follow the routine, then I'm not giving my time to what I shouldn't be doing. And then I'm much more accountable, and that has been really, really, really useful when I have used that. So it's just finding a program or a pattern that works for each person. Not too hard, not too steep, so it's nice and easy and fluid for each person to cope with.
Love that. Great, great tips. So this has just been a great conversation. I just admire
Okay.
all the things that you're doing. I mean, it's amazing. And I just love your mindset about being able to do it regardless, just having the attitude to get it done. So, what's the best way for the audience to get a hold of you?
Oh, thanks. That would be my Instagram handle, which is
Mhm.
at coached by TOB. That's COACHED BYTOB, or my website, which is titilolabalogun.com. So just as it's spelled on the screen, .com. And on the website, you can find a link to my Instagram page. So just in case you didn't get that, my book is available on Amazon as well, too, in quite a lot of countries. So
Amen.
so I'm sure you can avail yourself of that, and that'll be really useful. And I'm sure it will bless and equip the recipients or the buyers.
Very good. And what final thoughts would you like to leave with everybody today?
Stay in the moment. Take one day at a time. That's one thing that has helped me through my journey. I can't deny it. I
Mm-hmm.
just really can't deny it. Just learn to stay in the moment and let tomorrow help and deal with itself, really.
Awesome. Great words of wisdom. Well, you guys heard it here. Another great connection through Clubhouse,
Yeah.
y'all. I'm telling you,
Yeah,
if you're not on Clubhouse, you need to get on there, okay? And I'm
absolutely.
not even getting paid for this commercial right now, but it's a great platform to make great connections such as these.
Yes, yeah.
I just want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wealth of wisdom and insight with
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you. Thanks for
So
having me, Michelle. Thank
you
you.
are so welcome. If any of you guys have any questions, please reach out. And if you want to ask some questions, put them in the comments. We'll be sure that we will share those with Tita Lola, and she can answer those for you. In the meantime, share this video. If something was said, I think a big nugget was taking things day by day,
Mm,
not getting caught up in trying to do a million things
mm,
and impact so many people, just taking
yeah,
it one day at a time. That's a major aha. So I hope
mm.
you guys were taking notes. But thank you guys so much for watching this morning. And we look forward to seeing you all on the next episode. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.